Hey, and welcome back to the Contemplation Cafe. This is Paul, your host, as always, inviting you to come inside, pull up a chair, and have a think or two. Today, we are going to have our final pre-discussion on faith before we actually get into faith. And I think the most important thing we're going to talk about here is a thing called balance. As within other things out there and all things Christendom, balance is very, very important. It keeps us from going off into a ditch on one side or the other. Just like, for example, free will versus predestination, election, and foreknowledge. You can really just kind of get off onto one side or the other. Before you know it, you're in a ditch, and that's just not where we want to be. We want to stay on a road and get to where we're going. So balance is very important, and I'm going to always do my best to look at a balanced perspective on things. That's where it's at. That's how we do this. So in the world of faith, let's go and start back in Hebrews 11. Now, your assignment is to read the entire chapter. And I'm just going to hit some of the highlights to move through this pre-discussion. But this is for you just to read through and to contemplate. A couple highlights. Number one, go back to Hebrews 11:6. For without faith it is impossible to please God. We must believe that He exists, or that He is, and that He's a rewarder of those who diligently seek Him. So let's back up to the word diligently. Diligence means putting in some time and putting in some effort. Just like when you're in school, your studies. In fact, some of the older translations there in Timothy say to study to show yourself approved unto God, a workman that need not be ashamed, rightly dividing the word of truth. To study, but in the more newer translations it says be diligent to do that. But it still means the same thing. Put in the time, put in the effort, put in the work. So just as in this case here, when we are before the Lord, without faith, it's impossible to please Him. We have to believe that He rewards those who diligently seek Him, who put in the time, who don't just casually, oh, hey, Lord, how about a new job? Or, hey, Lord, how about the money to pay my bills? Nope, it's diligence. It's persistence and consistency in prayer. One other thing to go along with that would be Jesus in Matthew 7 talks about ask and seek and knock. And the promise is if you do those and keep doing those, so it's ask and keep on asking, seek and keep on seeking, knock and keep on knocking, then you will receive. It'll be opened. You'll get an answer. But it's putting in the time to do those things. And that's something I want you to understand, because you go back and look through Hebrews 11, we see some really cool stuff, right? We've got fireworks, people who became strong, they subdued kingdoms, all this cool stuff, and we're like, yeah, that's awesome. But look a little bit later on, oh, wait, there's more. Oh, people were stoned. People were sawed in two. People were tortured, and people had to go live in caves and disguise themselves as sheep and goats to wander around in the wilderness night and day. That doesn't sound so fun now, does it? But what does Hebrews 11 say? That all these people are in that faith hall of heroes. So even those people who died, they died in faith, believing God's promises. Look at Abraham. Abraham had to believe in faith for 25 years before he had Isaac. But then some promises he never saw at all. But we go back and look at what Jesus was talking about with the religious people, and He told them, Abraham saw my day from afar and was glad. How did that happen? We don't have a recording of that in the Old Testament, but somehow, somewhere in all that, God gave Abraham the eyes of faith to see through time and see Jesus. And again, so Abraham received the promises by faith. He believed them, and he confessed that he was only just passing through because he was looking for that eternal city, and he died in faith, as did Isaac, as did Jacob, as did Joseph. So sometimes in faith, things take some time. And I can't really explain other than sometimes God has to do a work in us, and sometimes God has to go and do a work somewhere else to get things lined up for us. I can't explain it. Maybe God will reveal those things as we go through a certain circumstance. But just know that it's really about persistency and consistency. And as we're going through and we're believing in faith, the promises of God, we're grasping onto spiritual truths, whatever it is, that with consistent and persistent effort in prayer and in believing, possibly in even confession or in action, then the fruit of faith will come. May come like that, may come after a growing season. I don't know. That's for the Lord to reveal in His own good time. But this is something I want you to think about, contemplate this, turn over your mind as we prepare to dive into faith. Go back and read that chapter again and just kind of sit back and think through it. Go, okay, all of this is faith. And one last thought, in amongst the other things that's in the Bible, two of the things we have in there are spiritual truth and promises of God, right? We have the promises and we have spiritual truths. They're all received by faith. Not more one than the other. We receive it all by faith. And when we talk about faith, there's different kinds of faith. I hate to say that because you can get off into a bad spot with that. But there are different kinds of faith in some ways. For example, the faith that it takes to get born again. That's a different kind of faith than what we do in daily living. It's a different faith than 1 Corinthians chapter 12. Some people call that supernatural faith, but all faith is supernatural, isn't it? But so maybe this is special faith, maybe it's extraordinary faith, whatever, mega faith, I don't know, whatever you call it. We're going to get into all that later on. But do understand that faith really touches every area of our lives, because again, the Word says that we walk by faith, not by sight. Faith is always about things that we don't see, but sight is what we do see. So faith is always about what we don't see. We walk by what we don't see, not by what we do see. All right, that's enough for one day. Thanks again for stopping by the Contemplation Cafe. We'll see you again next time.